There's a level of discipline that makes people look at you with fear. And today, you'll discover exactly how to get there. Have you ever seen that person who never fails? Who wakes up every day at the same time, trains without excuses, and executes their plan with mechanical precision? While everyone else gives up by the third week, they keep going. While everyone else negotiates with themselves every morning, they just show up. And you know what people say about them? Man, that's not normal. 400 years ago in Japan, there was a man who won 61 duels and never lost once. He started at age 13, and by 30, he was undefeated. His name was Miyamoto Musashi, and he wasn't the strongest physically, nor the fastest, but he developed something no opponent could break, a mind that knew no negotiation, and a body that executed without hesitation. Before he died, Musashi wrote down his complete system, and hidden within those pages is the exact method for building discipline so extreme that people will think you're obsessed. But there's a catch. This system isn't for everyone. It requires you to kill the part of yourself that negotiates, that bargains, that makes excuses, the part you've been protecting your entire life. Before I show you how it works, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and comment. What's the one habit you want to master so completely that people think you're crazy? This shows me you're genuinely interested in transformation, not just entertainment. Let's go. Chapter 1. The Awakening. The story I'm about to tell you happened to a software engineer named Marcus, 34 years old, good job, married, 2 kids, smart guy, successful career. But Marcus had one problem that was destroying him slowly. He couldn't maintain discipline for more than 2 weeks, gym membership 3 months, and he'd quit. Morning routine, 1 week of perfection, then complete collapse. Reading. He'd buy a book, read 10 pages, and it would sit on his nightstand for 6 months collecting dust. The pattern was always the same. Monday, total motivation. I'm going to change everything. Wednesday, first mental negotiation. Maybe I can skip today. Friday, complete surrender. I'll start again next week. Sunday, new promises, new plans, same person. Marcus tried everything. Habit tracking apps, accountability partners, reward systems, motivational videos every morning. Nothing worked because he was fighting something he couldn't even see. He was fighting the very architecture of his mind that had been built over 34 years of negotiation, compromise, and surrender, until the day he discovered why Miyamoto Musashi could train every single day from age 13 until his death at 62 without missing a single session. And no, it's not willpower, it's not motivation, it's not some genetic gift. It's something much deeper and much more dangerous. Musashi discovered how to make discipline operate below the level of conscious choice. He found a way to remove negotiation from the equation entirely. And that's where Marcus's real journey began. Chapter 2. Ippon, the irreversible commitment in feudal Japan. When a samurai made a blood oath in front of his lord and fellow warriors, something permanent happened. He wasn't making a promise he could break later. He was changing his identity in a way that made failure equal to death. They called this Ippon. Literally translated, it means one commitment, one singular, irreversible commitment that defines who you are. Do you understand what that means? It means that from the moment of that oath, the samurai stopped negotiating with himself. The question, should I do this today, simply ceased to exist in his mind. Not because he had superhuman willpower, but because he had restructured his identity at a level deeper than thought. You want to know what never happened after a samurai made Ippon? No samurai woke up thinking, maybe I'll skip training today. The question didn't exist. Why? Because they understood something you don't yet. Your brain categorizes every commitment into two boxes: reversible or irreversible. Reversible commitments become mental negotiations. Every single day, your brain asks, do I really need to do this? What if I skip today? Is this worth the discomfort? This negotiation burns mental energy that should be used for execution. Irreversible commitments simply happen. The brain stops asking questions because it has already classified this behavior as part of your identity. You don't negotiate about breathing. You don't debate whether to eat when you're starving. Why? Because these behaviors are categorized as irreversible aspects of who you are. When Musashi made his commitment to mastery at age 13, he didn't promise to try to train every day. He declared himself a warrior in front of witnesses. His village knew, his teacher knew. The identity was public, witnessed, permanent. The community witnessed it. The identity changed. The negotiation ended. A Harvard University neuroscientist who has been studying habit formation for 18 years has discovered something revolutionary. When you make a behavior public and tie it to your identity, your primitive brain interprets failure as a survival threat. Our ancestors who lost status in the tribe died. They were exiled, starved, killed. Your brain still operates on that ancient programming. That's exactly what Marcus did. He stopped making private promises and started making irreversible declarations. He didn't write, I will try to train every day. He wrote, I am a man who trains at 5 a.m. every single day for 100 consecutive days. No exceptions, no negotiations. He signed it. He posted it publicly on social media. He told his wife, his friends, his co-workers. He made failure visible, his wife said. You're being dramatic. His co-workers said, that's extreme, man. His friends said, you're going to burn out. Perfect. Every person who doubted him became fuel. Every morning he wanted to quit. He thought about having to post online that he broke after 5 days. He thought about looking his co-workers in the face and admitting he was just another man who couldn't keep his word. Day 3 brought the first real test. The alarm rang at 4:50 a.m. His body was sore from the first 2 days. His mind immediately began its routine. You're exhausted. This isn't sustainable. One rest day won't hurt. But something fundamental had changed. The thought of public failure was more painful than the discomfort of training. The Ippon commitment had moved discipline from the realm of willpower into the realm of identity protection. His primitive brain had been hijacked. Failure now meant social death. He got up, he trained, but this was only the first principle. The irreversible commitment solved the should I do this problem. But Marcus still faced a battle every single morning. His body resisted. His mind created elaborate justifications. That's when he discovered Musashi's second principle. Chapter 3. Guoji, the immovable hour. Miyamoto Musashi wrote in the Book of 5 Rings, the warrior does not choose when to fight. The warrior chooses when he will always be ready. In every Zen monastery in Japan, there is a rule that seems simple but changes everything. The morning bell rings at 3:30 a.m., not 3:25, not 3:35, exactly 3:30 a.m. And it has rung at exactly that time every single day since the temples were built, some over 800 years ago. You want to know what never happens in those monasteries? No monk wakes up and thinks, what time should I meditate today? The question doesn't exist because the hour is immovable. It's not a preference. It's not negotiable. It's fixed into the structure of reality like gravity. Most people fail at discipline because they make time a variable. I'll work out when I have energy. I'll write when inspiration strikes. I'll study when I'm in the mood. Every time you make time a variable, your brain has to make a decision, and every decision burns glucose. Every decision creates an opportunity for negotiation. Every negotiation creates an opportunity for surrender. Musashi trained at dawn, every single day. Rain or shine, injured or healthy, motivated or exhausted, the time was immovable. This wasn't about finding the optimal training time. It was about eliminating time as a variable entirely. Marcus implemented this with surgical precision, 5 a.m. every day. Not early morning, not when I wake up. Exactly 5 a.m. He chose this time not because he was a morning person. He chose it because the world was asleep. No messages, no calls, no emergencies, no excuses. The first week was war. His body fought against it every morning. That's normal. Your body is a pattern recognition machine, and you're forcing it to build a new pattern. It resists because change requires energy. But in the second week, something shifted. He started waking up at 4:58 a.m., 2 minutes before the alarm. His body was beginning to prepare for what it now expected. By day 14, the alarm rang and his feet touched the floor before his conscious mind even engaged. No thought, no decision, just movement. Here's what most people don't understand about fixed hours. It's not about finding your perfect schedule. It's about removing time as a negotiation point. When the hour is immovable, your brain can't argue with a constant. A Stanford University researcher who has been studying circadian rhythms and habit formation for 22 years explains, when you perform an action at the same time every day for approximately 21 days, the body begins to prepare physiologically before the action occurs. Cortisol rises, body temperature adjusts, neural pathways activate. The behavior begins to happen at the biological level before you consciously decide. Marcus had locked down the when, but he discovered a third problem. Some mornings he felt strong and would train hard. Other mornings he felt weak and would do the minimum. His discipline was inconsistent because the practice itself was still variable. He was negotiating about what, even though he'd eliminated negotiating about when. That's where the third principle nearly broke him. Chapter 4. Kata, the unchanging form. Miyamoto Musashi practiced the same sword strikes 10,000 times before he ever modified them. He didn't add variety. He didn't keep it interesting. He executed the same kata, the same sequence, the same form, until his body knew it deeper than thought. This is where most modern people destroy their own discipline. They confuse variety with progress. They think changing the workout keeps it fresh. They think trying new methods prevents boredom. But variety is actually where discipline dies. Every time you change what you're doing, your brain has to make micro decisions. Should I do push-ups or pull-ups today? 30 minutes of reading or 60? Meditation or journaling? These seem like small choices, but each decision is a crack where your old patterns seep back in. Musashi's kata principle is brutal. Execute the exact same practice in the exact same order for a minimum of 90 days. Same movements, same duration, same sequence, zero variation. Marcus locked down his practice with precision. 20 burpees, 10 minutes of shadow boxing, 10 minutes of meditation, exact same order, every day, same timer, same routine. No negotiation about what? No choices about how long? No decisions about sequence. His friends called him robotic. His wife said he was becoming obsessive. They didn't understand that robotic was exactly the point. Week 3, his mind went to war. Every morning, it screamed for variety. This is boring. You're not growing. You need to mix it up or you'll plateau. Week 4, something inside him broke. Not his discipline, his resistance. The voice of negotiation grew quieter. By week 6, he would be halfway through his burpees before he consciously realized he'd started. The kata was taking over. The practice was beginning to execute itself. This is what people don't understand about discipline. It's not about willpower lasting forever. It's about repetition until willpower becomes irrelevant. When you repeat the exact same sequence in the exact same context for approximately 66 days, the basal ganglia of your brain take over. The behavior becomes automatic. A MIT neuroscientist who has been studying motor learning and habit automatization for 15 years discovered something fascinating. When you repeat an identical sequence in an identical context, the brain begins to chunk the behavior. Individual steps disappear. The entire sequence becomes a single unit that fires automatically. This is why professional athletes can execute complex movements without conscious thought. The kata has been absorbed into the neural architecture. But here's what nobody tells you about the kata principle. Around day 35, something dangerous happens. You feel like you've mastered it. You feel like you can relax. You start thinking about modifications, improvements, variations. This is the trap that kills 90% of people who make it this far. On day 37, Marcus caught the flu. On day 42, he had to travel for work. This is where the old Marcus would have broken, where everyone breaks. Sick day equals rest day. Travel equals exception. Disruption equals surrender. But Musashi understood something about gaps that changes everything. He wrote that practice must continue without even a moment of gap, because in that gap, all your old patterns return. That's when Marcus learned the fourth principle, the one that separates those who build discipline from those who achieve mastery. Chapter 5, Shoshin, the minimum viable practice. The biggest lie destroying your discipline is this: if I can't do it perfectly, I shouldn't do it at all. You tell yourself, if I can't do the full workout, why do anything? If I can't meditate for 30 minutes, I'll skip it today. If I can't give 100%, I'll wait until I can. This all-or-nothing thinking creates gaps, and gaps are where your old identity crawls back in. Listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you, because this will save you when everything else fails. Miyamoto Musashi never missed a day of training in 49 years, not once. From age 13 until his death at 62, the practice continued. But here's what the legends don't tell you, what most people never discover. Some days, Musashi trained for 8 hours in the mountains, refining techniques until his hands bled. Some days, he trained for 8 minutes because he was recovering from a duel wound. The duration changed, the conditions changed, his physical state changed, but the presence never did. He called this Shoshin, the beginner's mind, the ability to return to the practice regardless of conditions, regardless of circumstances, regardless of how you feel. Not perfect practice, not optimal practice, not impressive practice, just practice. The presence matters more than the performance. Marcus learned this the hard way. He built his emergency protocol after almost breaking on day 33. He wrote it down with the same precision he used for his main practice. Sick? 10 burpees instead of 20. 2 minutes of meditation instead of 10. 1 page of reading instead of 10. Traveling? Burpees in the hotel room. Shadow boxing in the parking lot. Meditation in the airport bathroom. Exhausted beyond measure. 5 burpees. 1 minute of stillness, but never zero. Never zero. Because zero is not a number on the continuum of discipline. Zero is the absence of discipline. Zero is returning to your old identity. Zero is the gap where everything you've built disappears. On day 37, the flu hit Marcus like a freight train. Fever of 102 degrees, body aching, head pounding. The old Marcus, the one who existed before day 1, would have said, "I'm sick, I need complete rest. I'll start again when I'm healthy. Missing a few days won't matter." But that voice was no longer in control. The new Marcus woke up at 5 a.m. with his body screaming. He walked to his training space. He did 10 burpees, each one feeling like his muscles were tearing. He sat for 2 minutes of meditation while his head pounded. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't optimal. It wasn't Instagram-worthy. It was presence. The practice continued. On day 42, Marcus had to travel for a work conference. Different city, different time zone, different hotel room with no equipment. The conference dinner ran until 11 p.m. He had to wake up at 4:30 a.m. local time to maintain his 5 a.m. home time practice. The old Marcus would have said, "This is an exception. Traveling doesn't count. I'll double up when I get home." But exceptions are just gaps, wearing disguises. Marcus did his practice in a hotel gym at 4:30 a.m. in a city 2,000 miles from home. His body was jet-lagged. His mind was foggy. But his discipline was present. 20 burpees, 10 minutes of shadow boxing, 10 minutes of meditation. The practice continued. Here's what was happening beneath the surface that Marcus didn't fully understand yet. Every single time he maintained presence, despite imperfect conditions, he was rewriting a deeper program in his brain. He was teaching his nervous system that discipline is not conditional, that the practice is not dependent on perfect circumstances, optimal energy, or ideal conditions. A Yale University behavioral psychologist who has been studying habit maintenance and long-term adherence for 17 years conducted a fascinating longitudinal study. She tracked 500 people attempting to build new behaviors over a 5-year period. Her findings were revolutionary. The people who maintained behaviors for years weren't the ones who executed them perfectly. They were the ones who executed them continuously. A person who exercises 10 minutes a day for 5 years gets dramatically better results than someone who exercises 90 minutes a day for 3 months and then quits. Continuity beats intensity. Presence beats performance. The minimum viable practice sustained over time creates more transformation than the perfect practice that eventually breaks. This is Shoshin, the minimum viable practice that maintains presence without demanding perfection. But Marcus was about to discover that even with all 4 principles active, the irreversible commitment that ended negotiation, the immovable hour that eliminated time as a variable, the unchanging form that removed choice, and the minimum practice that bridged the gaps, he still faced a level of challenge that threatened to destroy everything. Because life doesn't just throw you sick days and travel disruptions, life throws you real crisis, the kind that makes everything else seem trivial, the kind that makes discipline feel like a luxury you can't afford when survival is at stake. That's when Marcus learned about Musashi's fifth principle, the one Musashi considered more important than sword technique, more fundamental than strategy, more powerful than strength. The principle that determines whether you break or become unbreakable. Chapter 6. Fudoshin, the Immovable Mind. Day 63 started like every other day. Alarm at 4:50 a.m. Feet on the floor at 4:52 a.m. Training space at 4:55 a.m. Practice begins at 5 a.m. But at 9:17 a.m., Marcus's entire world shattered. The email subject line read, "Workforce reduction. Immediate action required." Marcus had lost his job. The company was restructuring. His position was eliminated. He had 30 days of severance, 2 kids to feed, a mortgage payment due in 3 weeks, and a job market that was brutal in his industry. The old Marcus would have collapsed, would have spiraled into panic, anxiety, emergency mode, would have abandoned his 5 a.m. practice immediately to focus on what really matters, would have broken his 63-day streak, because this is a real crisis, and discipline is a luxury I can't afford right now. But something was different. Something fundamental had changed in the architecture of Marcus's mind. Day 64. Alarm at 4:50 a.m. Feet on floor at 4:52 a.m. 20 burpees, 10 minutes shadow boxing, 10 minutes meditation. Then, and only then, did Marcus open his laptop and begin his job search. His wife found him in his training space at 5:15 a.m., and her face showed pure confusion mixed with concern. "How are you doing this? How are you so calm? Marcus, we could lose everything. The house, the savings, everything we've built. And you're doing burpees?" Marcus looked at her with a stillness in his eyes she'd never seen before. "This practice is not separate from solving the problem. This practice is what allows me to solve the problem without panic destroying my judgment." He had developed what Miyamoto Musashi called Fudoshin, the immovable mind, the mind that does not waver, does not panic, does not scatter its energy, regardless of external circumstances. Musashi wrote in his final years, "The warrior's mind should be like a still pond in the deep forest. A stone thrown into the water creates ripples on the surface, but the depths remain unmoved, undisturbed, unchanged. The surface is your circumstances. The depths are your discipline. Protect the depths, and the surface will calm itself." Most people have this backwards. They abandon their discipline the moment crisis arrives. They think discipline is something you do when life is stable, when you have time, when you have energy, when everything is under control. But that's exactly backwards. Discipline is not the luxury of stable times. Discipline is the anchor that keeps you stable when everything else is chaos. Marcus continued his practice through the entire 30-day job search. Day 63, the day the email arrived. Day 64, the first day of unemployment. Day 65, when panic tried to set in. Day 70, when doubt whispered that he was wasting time. Day 75, when fear suggested he should be spending every waking moment on applications. Every single morning at 5 a.m., while his external world was completely uncertain, his internal practice remained absolutely certain. And something remarkable happened. The job interviews he attended, he showed up different. While other candidates radiated desperation, anxiety, need, Marcus radiated calm capability. While others scrambled to say what they thought the interviewer wanted to hear, Marcus spoke with clarity because his mind wasn't clouded by panic. A former Navy SEAL instructor who has been studying human performance under extreme stress and high-stakes environments for 20 years, explains this phenomenon. The people who perform best under pressure aren't the ones who pray for calm conditions and fall apart when things get hard. They're the ones who maintain their daily routines through absolute chaos. The routine becomes the psychological anchor. When everything external is unstable, unpredictable, and threatening, the internal practice provides the one stable point. Your nervous system learns. No matter what happens outside, this one thing remains. And that stability in one area creates stability in all areas. On day 78, Marcus received a phone call. Job offer. Better position than his previous role. 20% higher salary. Larger team to lead. When he hung up the phone, his heart rate barely elevated. His hands didn't shake. His voice remained steady as he told his wife the news. The Fudoshin discipline had done more than maintain his practice through crisis. It had rewired his entire nervous system's relationship with stress. He had trained himself to remain unmoved by external circumstances, whether devastating or triumphant. But there was one final test approaching. The test that no one tells you about. The test that arrives not when things are hard, but when things become easy. When the practice becomes so automatic that it feels meaningless. This is where the final trap waits. The trap that destroys people who successfully build mechanical discipline. Chapter 7. Mushin, the Death of the Self, Day 89. Marcus woke up at 4:52 a.m. His body moved through the practice with perfect precision, 20 burpees, 10 minutes shadow boxing, 10 minutes meditation, exactly as he'd done for 88 days before. But as he sat in meditation, a thought emerged from somewhere deep. What's the point? Not doubt, not weakness, not negotiation, something more dangerous, emptiness. The practice had become so automatic, so mechanical, so divorced from conscious effort, that it felt like his body was executing code written by someone else. He was a machine now, perfectly disciplined, completely hollow. This is the moment where 95% of people who successfully build discipline quit. Not because it's hard, but because it feels meaningless. They reach automaticity and mistake it for purposelessness. They become the disciplined person they wanted to be, and then wonder why it doesn't feel like they thought it would. Marcus sat with this emptiness for 3 days. Days 89, 90, and 91. The practice continued perfectly, but the meaning seemed gone. On day 92, Marcus opened his copy of the Book of Five Rings to a passage he'd read a dozen times but never understood. Miyamoto Musashi's final written words, composed 1 week before his death in a cave alone. I regret nothing. I fear nothing. I desire nothing. I have spent my entire life seeking the way. Now I realize the way was seeking itself through me. I was never the master. I was the practice. Marcus read it again, and again. And then something cracked open in his understanding. He had been doing the practice, but he was still separate from it. Still measuring it, still identifying with being the disciplined person, still afraid of losing the streak, the identity, the achievement. Musashi's final teaching was the most radical principle of all. Mushin, no mind, the complete death of the self that needs validation, that seeks reward, that measures progress, that identifies with achievement. On day 93, Marcus made a decision that seemed insane. He deleted his habit tracking app. He removed all the calendar marks that showed his streak. He stopped posting updates on social media. He stopped telling people about his practice. He stopped counting days entirely. and the practice continued, but now without ego attached to it, without fear of breaking it, without pride in maintaining it, without any separation between Marcus and the practice itself. He realized something that can only be understood through direct experience. You can't lose what you are. You can only lose what you have. If your discipline depends on maintaining a streak, you'll live in fear of breaking it. If your identity depends on being the disciplined guy, you'll become rigid, defensive, fragile. You'll judge others who aren't as disciplined. You'll become attached to the achievement rather than the practice itself. But if discipline simply becomes what you do because it's who you are, nothing external can take it away. Not failure, not success, not praise, not criticism, nothing. Marcus stopped knowing what day he was on. Day 100 came and went without notice. Day 150. Day 200. The practice continued, but the counter had been destroyed. A Zen master who has been teaching meditation in complete silence for 37 years was once asked by a student, "Master, when will I achieve enlightenment?" The master replied, "The student begins by forcing himself to sit in meditation, fighting his thoughts, struggling with discipline. Then the meditation becomes natural, effortless, automatic. Then the meditation becomes unnecessary, not because the student stops meditating, but because the student has become meditation itself. There is no longer a person doing meditation, there is only meditation happening. The separation dissolves, the self dies, the practice remains. This is Mushin, the death of the practitioner, the birth of pure practice. 6 months after Marcus began, something uncomfortable started happening. People began avoiding him. Not because he was arrogant or preachy, he never spoke about his practice unless directly asked. Not because he was aggressive or harsh, he was actually calmer, more present, more genuinely kind than he'd ever been. People avoided him because his presence was uncomfortable. When you eliminate negotiation, excuses, self-deception, and weakness from your own life, you become a mirror. People look at you and see reflected back everything they're not, every excuse they're making, every negotiation they're having with themselves, every compromise they're accepting, and that reflection hurts them. His old friends stopped inviting him to weekend plans. His co-workers stopped making jokes about discipline and motivation around him. His own brother said at a family dinner, "Man, you're becoming obsessed. This isn't healthy. Normal people don't act like this." And Marcus smiled, because that's exactly when you know you've arrived. When your discipline makes comfortable people uncomfortable, you're finally operating at the level Musashi operated at, the level where discipline is no longer something you do. It's something you are. Miyamoto Musashi walked alone into Reigando Cave at age 60 to write his final teachings. He had no money, no title, no students waiting outside, no one to validate his achievement, no one to measure his success. But he had something no person, no circumstance, no disaster could ever take from him: complete mastery over himself. His last words, "I regret nothing." How many people reach the end of their life and can say that with truth? How many people live at the absolute limit of their capabilities? How many eliminate fear, negotiation, and weakness completely? The question isn't, how did Musashi do it? The question is, why aren't you doing it right now? You have access to the same knowledge he had. You have the same 24 hours in a day. You have the same human nervous system with the same neurological potential for transformation. The difference between you and Musashi isn't ability. It isn't genetics. It isn't circumstances. The difference is willingness. Willingness to make the irreversible commitment. Willingness to fix the immovable hour. Willingness to execute the unchanging form. Willingness to maintain the minimum practice when everything falls apart. Willingness to develop the immovable mind when crisis strikes. And finally, willingness to let the self die so that only practice remains. Subscribe to this channel right now. Turn on the notification bell and comment below with your Ippon commitment, your irreversible declaration, the discipline you'll build that will make people think you've lost your mind. Write it publicly. Sign it with your identity. Make it visible. Make failure more painful than continuation. Remember this: the discipline that scares others is the only discipline worth having. The practice that makes comfortable people uncomfortable is proof you're finally on the right path. Musashi spent his life alone because mastery isolates you from those who choose comfort. But he regretted nothing. Will you? See you in the next one.